So, welcome to the latest episode in our Buy More Time series, where we'll explore solutions to drastically cut emissions from methane, but other short-lived to reduce global warming. And let's make it clear from the start, this is not about putting our feet up, buying more time. It's about getting all hands on deck and making sure that we sprint with the short-lived climate pollution and also run the marathon, which is carbon dioxide. Health is one of the main themes of COP29 today. So we're going to focus on this issue of health risks associated with super pollutants, but also other and products that actually affect human health. Just a few days ago here in our studio, I had the opportunity to sit down with Maria Neira, Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment with the World Health Organization. So let's watch this little video of her chatting about this topic before we go to two terrific guests. So another fantastic guest here with us in Baku in Azerbaijan on the Caspian Sea at COP29, Maria Neira. I'm not sure if I ever pronounced that right, Maria, but...
It's more beautiful, Neira.
Neira.
But it's not easy to pronounce,
okay,
I understand.
Thank you, especially for an English person, yeah. And she is the Director of the Department of Public Health and Environment at the World Health Organization, and a physician herself by training. Maria, we're doing a series of shows here in Baku from COP29 on the super pollutant methane, which, as you know, is also short-lived, with the idea that perhaps if we could work really hard on that, it could buy us some more time for the full decarbonization to really go a little bit further and faster. So it's a climate risk, but also an opportunity. But it also emerges that methane is actually linked with a serious health issue as well, and we're doing a health show here today. So tell us a little bit about it from your perspective. Is it on the radar of the World Health Organization?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Nick. And let me maybe start by saying that we came to COP29 this year with a report. Of course, WHO has to present a report. But the report is called Health is the Argument and for climate action. And our idea is that you need to accelerate action, you need to be much more ambitious on your decision, because whatever we decide on all aspects of the negotiations here will have an incredible impact on our health. For good, if you take the right decisions, or for bad, if you take the wrong ones. So whatever means accelerate on this reduction on those gases that are creating such a problem for our health, methane and the short-lived climate pollutants. For a long time, we have been associating with the CCAC, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, because for us, it's a way to first very quickly start to produce results. Those results will have a positive impact on our health. So certainly, those super pollutants are affecting our health as well. Will be a way to, on a very short time, have very good results. We can document as well the health benefits that this will represent, and then we are convinced that by providing health arguments, health benefits, this is maybe the way to accelerate this action that is so much needed. So if we put health as an argument for climate action, a positive one, I think people need to hear positive things as well. Huh?
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I think methane and the super pollutants can give us very good news on short time and start to feed our population with something tangible and positive. And as I say, we can document how we are obtaining those health benefits and telling the people about that and how we are trying to protect them, their health. I think we need to bring more here to these COPs, the visualizing for people how much their lungs are affected, how much their health is affected, how much their mental health is affected, how much cardiovascular diseases, respiratory diseases, name it, people displaced, how much they are affected. So the more we can dig on that and the quickest we have results, the more we will be motivating people to accelerate and
absolutely.
So much work.
Well, I mean, the show is called We Don't Have Time, but which means we don't have time to mess around. But it's also a show that tries to, show that there are actually all these pathways that we can take, and certainly with something like methane, which is mainly coming from the oil and gas industry, from leaks and things like that. from waste tips and landfills and agriculture, which is a bit more politically complex, but that actually this is, you know, either a major problem or it's a major opportunity, and framing it as an opportunity is much more sensible, and it doesn't cost. You actually make money if you actually collect the methane and use it, and there's no new technologies you need, so what's stopping everybody? Let's go. Yeah.
Well, a long time ago we understood in the health community that we need to work with different sectors, you know, that health is not just what's happened at the hospitals. At the hospital we treat the health related problems, but our health started somewhere else, and it started with the agricultural practices, it started with the land use, it started with the production of our food, how much we need a sustainable food system, how much we need an acceleration to the different sources of energy, clean sources of energy, how much we need to interact with urban planners, industrial people, innovation. So definitely we are ready to look for health opportunities in any sector that will have something to contribute. And I think methane could be a very important one to start to generate those health benefits, people understanding, helping us as well on this intersectoriality that is very much related to our work on climate change and health. And then we are ready for this. It's a kind of super pollutants, super responses, quick ones, and health benefits.
Yes. And here at the COP here in Baku, what have you been presenting? You had a press conference, I think, a few minutes ago. What points were you making in that?
The points are, as I say, that climate change is affecting our health. I think that is the reason why we have been attending COPs for many years now. But the next step, tackling the causes of climate change can generate enormous health benefits, by transitioning to clean sources of energy. So we need to accelerate this transition. That's why we are interested on this quick phasing out or quick transition away from fossil fuels, because they are killing us. But in the meantime, we can look at methane as well and those super pollutants, because they are part of the agenda as well. What we are presenting, and I think is important, is that we are incorporating health into the NDCs, and we are sharing with countries a report on how to do that. Because at the moment, all the national determined contributions, everybody named health and everybody put it health very, very high, and clearly is there. But when you look at the implementation or concrete actions, health almost disappear. So we are giving very strong guidance, particularly to our health community, to how to get integrated. I think health can be a perfect indicator of whether or not we are successful on our negotiations here. It will be such a dream to have as the kind of measuring the success of the negotiations, a health indicator. Say, okay, you are saying that you are multiplying by 3 the access to renewable energy. Prove it by decreasing the prevalence of those diseases associated to air pollution, and by decreasing the mortality associated to air pollution. That would be amazing.
And there would be enormous economic benefits for all societies, surely, if that could happen. And
exactly.
In the end, you know, we know lots of people only think about what's the bottom line in terms of money, but I mean, it must be a win-win-win economically.
Exactly. Even on economic arguments, we know very well that in any case, the health system is already paying the price. Do you have an idea how much it costs to treat all of those chronic diseases caused by exposure to air pollution, you know, lung cancer, obstructive chronic pulmonary diseases, or asthma, all of those diseases caused by a stroke. Your brain is affected as well, neurodegenerative diseases. It costs a lot to our health system, so to our governments as well. So the price is already there, the money is already paid. We could use it on a different way. And of course, the subsidies that we are giving to the fossil fuels are not helping either. With that, we could do miracles in universal health coverage.
Absolutely. I mean, what is it? It's billions, hundreds of billions in direct subsidies, and then what society has to pay for those subsidized fossil fuels is 7 trillion, maybe much higher now. I mean, it's eye-watering, and 1 trillion, they say, is now needed for the developing countries. That was that Nicholas Stern report per year. And everyone's like, where are we going to get that from? It's like, well, just move your head slightly to the right,
Exactly.
and you'll see there's a golden egg over there if you only wish to harvest it. Look, thank you very much indeed for being with us.
Pleasure.
And thanks very much for chatting to us about methane and health. And you do absolutely tremendous work, and we're all in admiration.
Thank you so much, Nick.
Thank you.
We don't have time, so we
don't
need
have
to
time.
do it.
Yeah. So in the studio with me, I have Valerie Hickey, who's Global Director Environment at the World Bank, and Sean Maguire, who's Executive Director Strategic Partnerships at the Clean Air Fund. Welcome to our broadcast. Hi.
Lovely to be here, Nick.
Yeah, it's great to see you both. So Valerie, maybe I can come to you first. I understand you have a big passion about the nexus between air pollution, climate, health, and poverty. Can you explain that circle?
So I have a big passion for not seeing 700,000 children under the age of 5 dying from air pollution. And an awful lot of that air pollution are in fact super pollutants. And there's so much of what we call air pollution is in fact carbon emissions, methane emissions. And so we're never going to be able to bend the curve of emissions to zero unless we deal with the exact same pollutants that are causing air pollution. And for us at the World Bank, our job is to end poverty and do it on a livable planet. Because for so many poor people, if their kids can't go to school because they have an asthma attack, the schools that were closed in New Delhi today because the air pollution is just so bad, it means they're not going to be able to grow up into productive members of the labour force, get the good jobs that will put them into the middle class. And that means we're creating generations of poverty because of air pollution. If we fix air pollution, we're well on the road to fixing climate change.
I was moderating a session in the Green Zone the other day. It was about actually conflict and climate change. And there was a Palestinian refugee, I think, from in the Lebanon now. And she said something which I think I'd forgotten. I think I once knew, but I'd forgotten. That a baby breathes, is it twice as much as an adult does? So they're sucking in even more air as they're growing. And if it's polluted, the atmosphere, they are really, really sucking in totally toxic stuff on levels that the adult body is
Nick,
not
what's
doing.
frightening is we have babies coming out of the womb with smoker's lung, whose mothers never smoked a day in their life. But they're absorbing, because of PM 2.5, which is the size of the smoke particles that we're inhaling, because of how many are in the air in so many big cities and in so many rural areas too, because of forest fires and dust storms, babies in utero are getting sick. And at the end of the day, we cannot just beat climate change by thinking about the livability of the planet. We have to beat climate change with people first in mind. This is about doing development, doing it better, doing it in a way that's climate informed. And in a world with constrained resources, we have a debt crisis in poor countries, we have a cost of living crisis in every country. The more we can solve 2 or 3 problems with the one investment, the better. And air pollution, climate change, healthcare, these are 3 investments, 3 results we can get with one investment.
So when you think about it, I mean, sometimes people talk health and climate change as if climate change is the thing that needs to be solved because it's the problem, yes. But the underlying problem is the way we manage our economies. Yeah, the underlying problem is where we find our energy from, and that energy has a consequence to the atmosphere, but also to the air we breathe. And interestingly, you mentioned super pollutants in your first comments, because we've been focusing on those quite a lot. And I think people are nervous about 2 things, right? We're all worried about public health. We're also worried about dealing with climate change, and we're worried we've got 5 years to go to halve emissions. But it seems to be in the super pollutants, perhaps, and maybe through the lens of methane, that, you know, this could be a sprint we could maybe win if we really got serious about bringing that methane down. And for some sectors, like the oil and gas industry, most of the estimates are this is not a cost if they want to do it. It could actually be a small profit if they actually captured the methane that they're letting into the atmosphere. Does that kind of win-win chime in your head about things that could be done?
No, I think it's critical. Somebody from the US delegation talked about the fact that curbing methane is the climate emergency brake that we have to pull, because it's 80 times stronger as a carbon emitter in the first 20 years than carbon dioxide. It's responsible for a third of all climate change to date. If we can do something about methane, that's not just fossil fuels, it's agriculture. It's looking at organic waste and solid waste management. And each one of these sectors addressing methane can help address non-revenue losses. It can help address competitiveness in the market. And that's where we have to start finding these win-win solutions. The other thing, Nick, by the way, that gives me hope at the COP this year is that I think we're moving past advocacy on the link between air pollution, health and climate change and moving into action. And that action isn't with the health sector. The action isn't with the ministries of environment who sit here and come to the COP and negotiate either, even though they measure the air pollution. It's going to sit with the Ministry of Transport and figuring out, how do we shift to multimodal transport? How do we get bus rapid transit in place so that more people can get to work in public transportation, in electric buses than in their personal trucks or polluting small taxis? How do we work with the Ministry of Agriculture so that they do less burning and that they're able to still be more competitive and in fact have better on-farm productivity? And so in fact the discussions that are happening at that intersection of public health, climate change and air pollution are happening with exactly those ministries that have jurisdiction over the sources of those pollutants. And countries are moving. We're seeing, we just provided a loan in Turkey, $400 million to Turkey's Industrial Development Bank, because their industry is part of the problem on air pollution. Their industry wants to be part of the solution. They also want to be more competitive. And the EU market is making it harder to access unless industry they're buying from is more competitive. And so they're now going to get access to cheaper loans to transition their equipment from old polluting equipment into better equipment that will solve their competitiveness problem. So it's profit making for them, while reducing air pollution and reducing carbon emissions. That's a real win.
And the other ministry, of course, crucial, you added many ministries there, is the finance ministry. And they're
the mother of all
crucial.
ministries.
The mother of all ministries, okay. Sean Maguire, you're Executive Director, Strategic Partnerships at the Clean Air Fund. You obviously passionately care about air pollution. You are looking at some of these super pollutants. You mentioned black carbon when we were chatting, which is also fine particles, I think, as well. Sometimes it's a bit bigger as well, but it's soot, isn't it, of different sizes. Tell us a bit about this work.
Well, I think black carbon is an interesting one because it's technically not a greenhouse gas. So bizarrely, it's not regulated by the UNFCCC processes, the process that is running in the building that we're speaking in. So it's not part of the official kind of climate process, but it is a big climate driver. But the way it works is slightly differently to CO2. It affects weather patterns and it settles on snow and ice. It makes ice and snow melt more quickly, and that then, because it releases dark surfaces, that then accelerates warming. So it makes the snow and ice melt 20 times more quickly. So that's why we're seeing the Arctic shrinking much more quickly, and that's why we're seeing the Himalayan glaciers melt much more quickly than elsewhere. So what that means is you get water issues, you get water security issues, you get downstream flooding, and the other thing that happens is you get disturbed weather patterns. So the Indian monsoon becomes sharper, more intense, and West African rainfall gets scarcer. So you're getting regional climate impacts that are very direct, and as Valerie said, very directly impacting those who can least afford it. Vulnerable communities, poorer communities, often rural communities, and it starts to impact agriculture, starts to impact the ability to drive crop programs and crop harvests. So that's black carbon, big problem, we need to attack it, and the ways we attack it are the ways in which we also attack other climate warmers, basically by going after fossil fuels, but by going after them specifically in very targeted ways. Diesel vehicles, kerosene lamps. If we do this in particular areas, we'll get a much bigger climate win. And that means that governments can know they will know where to spend their money, where to invest. So if you go after kerosene in the Himalayan regions, you're going to get a big black carbon benefit, and we all benefit. We all gain from that. The other super pollutant that is really important to talk about is tropospheric ozone, ground level ozone.
Smog, as we were
Smog,
saying
yes.
before,
So it's
to
not
those-
the good ozone up in the stratosphere that's protecting us from UV. This is the smog at the ground level.
Yeah.
And it's a secondary pollutant, which means it's formed by a reaction in the air of what we call precursor chemicals, one of which is methane, but there's others, non-methane volatile organic compounds, and NOx, which is the stuff that comes out of the exhaust of a diesel car. It goes up into the air and it creates ground level tropospheric ozone. Very bad for your health, very bad for your respiratory system, but it also damages crops. It has a really negative impact on crop yields. So going back to the point that Valerie made about, it's not necessarily the Ministry of Health that needs to worry about this, it's the Ministry of Agriculture, because you're looking already at a 5 to 15% crop yield loss for major things like maize, like rice, and wheat. So by tamping down on ground level ozone, we can get this immediate economic dividend in terms of crop yields. So in the pursuit of sort of kind of wins and cheaper ways of getting action, that's one we should really be looking at.
Right. Yeah, I just was reading the Lancet Medical Journal before we came on air, and they say, this is a recent paper, that mortality linked with ozone, and not the, as you say, high-flying ozone, which we all love. Hello, ozone there. But the tropospheric ozone, that mortality linked with that is up 46% between 2000 and 2019, where they have the numbers for, linked with respiratory and cardiac disease caused by this. And of course, at the same time, methane levels are also shooting up as well. And of course, that new satellite that's up, Methane Sat, from the Environmental Defence Fund and the Government of New Zealand, is now showing that the levels are indeed much higher of the methane being released than actually we ever thought. So there is a kind of link there between our Buy More Time show and the methane and your work, and of course your work as well.
Yeah, so just on ozone, it's not an easy one to fix, but there are good examples of countries and cities that have tackled ozone and brought it down.
Right.
Beijing has done a good job. Mexico City historically had very high levels and has managed to bring it down. Los Angeles also had high levels of smog and have brought it down. So it is possible to take action. Sometimes you can go after the methane. Sometimes you can go after diesel vehicles. Sometimes you can go after what we call non-methane volatile organic compounds.
Right.
Sorry, it's a bit of a mouthful. And that's basically industrial solvents.
Yeah.
So so government intervention and smart traffic management and a few other measures can get you a grip on it.
Yeah.
And what's exciting, I think, Nick, is what Sean has said in terms of it has happened before is very exciting, because in so much of what we talk about in this hall is around climate change, is an awful lot of it has to be innovative, because we've never confronted this problem before. We've never done it. Air pollution has been tackled. In fact, Sean was talking about the Himalayan region and the problems with black carbon and smog and methane and you name it. In fact, many of the countries of the Himalayan foothills, from India, Pakistan, Bhutan, Nepal, have come together around smog diplomacy. And these countries are sitting together and agreed in a meeting in Bhutan in June this year, something called the Thimphu Outcome on Science Policy and Finance, exactly around that intersection of air pollution, health and climate change. And every country has to do something slightly different. But this is one of those truly global problems, because you can't simply control your own smog and your own precursor chemicals and think the job is done, because if your neighbor doesn't do it, the wind blows this way too. And so this is one of those ways where countries have to work together, and we're actually very excited about the rise of smog diplomacy.
Right.
Yeah, so just to build on that, coming back to black carbon is another one that you can't tackle on your own. You do need cross-border cooperation.
And it goes up in the jet stream as well, doesn't it?
It goes up in the jet stream, yeah. So one tangible example of that transboundary cooperation is the Arctic Council, which has worked. These are all the countries that sit around the Arctic, the sheet of ice up in the polar north. All of these countries have come together and have previously agreed to act on black carbon and act on reducing black carbon. and set themselves a target, and they're now in conversation about setting a more stretching target, realizing that there's still too much deposition of black carbon on the Arctic ice. More needs to be done, and they need to accelerate. So they're in that conversation now.
So how do we maybe, because we haven't got much time left, and obviously this is not just a 30-minute conversation, there's a lot more to say about this, but in the end it's going to be about how do we finance this transition, right? Away from what is killing people, harming people's health, destroying the planet, and other horrific things. How do we bring in, I mean, there's been so many assessments on the economics of what it would cost if we let climate change go mad. The Lord Stern report from way back now looks as fresh as it almost did then, and we have lots of green economic assessments and things like that. Maybe they shouldn't be called green economic assessments, they just should be called, this is the best assessment we should use right now for the future. There are levers, economic levers, levies, incentives. We have to protect the people on lower incomes from being forced to take technologies they can't afford, like electric cars, when they're too expensive. But eventually they will come down, like the price of renewable energy. How do we bring it all together? Where are the sources of funding? I mean, we talked about fossil fuel subsidies, maybe $7 trillion if you count the costs of the impacts of these subsidies on extreme weather.
Subsidies is exactly one of the places we have to get serious about. 1.5 trillion of direct investment spending every year that's creating $5.5 trillion worth of cost, most of it through air pollution, through healthcare losses and climate change. And that's $1.5 trillion that governments need to spend instead of burning the world down, solving their problems. And particularly in a debt and an affordability crisis, that's money that has to be reformed. We look at, for example, the agricultural subsidies to small farmers in parts of Africa, which are often nitrogen-based fertilizers, and this creates the nitrogen oxide that leads to healthcare costs. The farmers are getting sick, and they're not having any increase in the productivity on farm. This is a waste of money that's costing families and communities more. So thinking about giving that same small farmer, giving her the same amount of money, but instead of to produce nitrogen oxide and use it on her soil, on her land as a fertilizer, to think about nature positive fertilizers, think about biofertilizers, think about things that will not only decrease her health costs, but will increase productivity on farm. Again, it's a win-win-win, giving the money to the same people who need it, and the government doesn't have to spend an extra penny than they were spending before.
So I was going to say regenerative agriculture as well. I mean, there's legions of examples now where it takes maybe 4 years or 5 years to get off the intensive agricultural fossil fuel-based fertilizers to one where the soil starts regenerating the health of the soil in itself. But isn't the problem here is that there are some industries out there that don't want us to do that, right? I mean, whether it be the fossil fuel industry has a products that they sell. I read in the Financial Times the other day, the agricultural lobby, the agrochemical lobby, spends more on lobbying than even the oil and gas industry. So how it's also bringing those companies round to see that there might be a different way of them using their skills and making money.
It's the tango between government regulation that forces us all to live by rules of the game.
Yeah, seatbelts, for example.
And market choices, and market access, and market share choices. And so there's lots of room and lots of things changing. But your audience shouldn't go away thinking that nothing can be done. Lots of things are already happening and being done.
Well, that's why we're called We Don't Have Time. We know we don't have time to wait, but we always try and look at the positives as well. But bring some of the negatives so we can talk about the positives afterwards.
Yeah, but I mean, two very good examples of industries that have changed the entire power sector.
Yeah.
You know, the shift to renewable energy, a mix of incentives to get going, technological innovation, and government nudges for uptake, and off you go. Solar, wind, massive now, and it's the future. And coal-fired power will disappear into history. And electric mobility. That's another area where, again, it's a mixture of incentives, business subsidies, some government nudges, and fantastic amounts of innovation that has taken place. And we will get there on innovation in electric vehicles. Parts of the world, you can no longer buy a petrol-powered two-wheeler. You have to drive an electric two-wheeler. And that's again the future. So we will see petrol and diesel-powered vehicles disappear into the rearview mirror.
Exactly. Good. Well, I think we might well leave it there, but I would like to say that I share your sense that this is not just a one-sided story of doom and gloom. There is so much creativity going on, so much unbelievable research, and even the nationally determined contributions, which were once in Paris a little bit, on the back of a cigarette packet, how I used it with the ideas. We had Achim Steiner of UNDP on the show, and he said you cannot believe how more detailed they are becoming, and some of them are actually really approaching what they need to be, which are investment plans for the private sector and for public money to actually invest. So look, thank you very much for your great work. And if you're interested in Buy More Time, our new campaign, you can go to wedon'thavetime.org, and lots of people are joining it. And we think it's a good lens to put on this climate change, but also wider story about our future. So thank you very much indeed.